Today we'll be talking more about V-Ray and showing an example of how to apply it to your actual scenes and then how to composite the entire thing together using After Effects. You can use any kind of program, like Nuke is a popular one people use, but I know After Effects, that's the one I'm going to use. So just real quick, we briefly looked at how you can, in fact I'll just show it to you real quick, how you can select a bunch of different render elements for your V-Ray. Let's get rid of those real quick. You can select any of these and choose which things you're going to render, like the RGB color, the diffuse layer, which is basically your color, global illumination, specular, reflections, etc., etc. You can choose what you're going to render. It's kind of similar to Substance Painter, how you can select what elements you're going to render. And of course, that varies depending on what render you're going to use. Same thing here. But when we're just talking about a default beauty render, which V-Ray people, I guess you could say, call it back to beauty for whatever reason, this is what they're talking about. So if you were to pick nothing, this is what V-Ray would automatically pick for you. This is the back to beauty render, or RGBA. So let's run through these real quick. Lighting. All the light in the scene. I'll show you what I mean when I say this, but lighting will not pick up things like glass, water, excuse me, substance scatter materials, things like that. And you'll see exactly what I mean when I say, when we get into it. Global illumination is all of the bounce light in the scene. Reflection, of course, the reflections of light. Refraction is light going through things like glass or water and being refracted or changed. Specular is all of the type pigment highlights, a lot of times very similar to reflections. Subsurface scatter, that for that one, think about things like leaves, skin, candle wax, things that are slightly transparent or a little bit opaque. It lets in some light into it, so the light goes into the material, kind of bounces around, and some of it will leave again, but not all of it. Self-illumination, like that, is pretty self-explanatory. It's anything that gives off light itself. Now, this doesn't include lights. This is things like mesh that give it off. A light bulb in a scene is a light, but if you take a light bulb mesh and make it self-illuminating, that's different from an actual light, like a sphere light or a dome light that you would put into the scene. Caustics are refracted light that continues to light the scene. We can turn these on or off. It can give you more realistic and natural looking light bouncing off things. Atmosphere is special effects like smoke, haze, smog is the same thing, foggy things, the same thing as hazy. But anyway, special effects like that. And background is your background image. So like I said, when you just do a basic back to beauty render, this is what you'll get. Obviously, we don't always need these things, so we can always pick and choose what we are and are not going to use. Jump back into Maya. So if let's say that this is our scene and we're ready to render it out. So let's just do a basic back to beauty render. Excuse me real quick while I turn this off. Let's pretend that wasn't on. So to start, you're going to want to obviously make sure your render settings are all set. I kind of played with mine a little bit, so yours might not be the same. But you're going to go to your render elements, and here's all of our options. The basic back to beauty has 10, so just make sure you have 10 of them. So let's go ahead and start atmosphere, background, caustics, global illumination, lighting. Let's see, we got reflection, refraction, subsurface scatter, SSS, self-illumination, specular, and that should be it. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, got them all. Now, you'll notice whenever you do this, V-Ray will add this kind of annoying V-Ray render tag to the front of them. We really want to keep this nice and tidy so it's really easy when we go to do our renders, composite everything. If you have really annoying names, and also this will not alphabetize, well, I mean, it will alphabetize it, but it's still annoying. It'll become more tedious later on in the process. So let's just go ahead and delete that part that says V-Ray RE for render. Go ahead and delete all of these. Now the good news is this would be really annoying to have to do this every single time, especially if like you're like, oh wait, I don't want this, and then you realize, oh wait, I did, and you have to bring it back in, it's annoying, we're animators, we have no patience for that kind of stuff. You can save all of these as a loadout, just like you could for things in Substance Painter and a lot of things. So you can always save this, and you don't have to worry about that. Now, one of the reasons why we deleted all of those, why is this not scrolling now? Interesting. One of the reasons why we deleted all the first part of the names is because down here we want to check this get name from node, and it'll automatically name everything based on our scene, based on the node, and it just keeps things very organized and nice and easy. One more quick thing while I'm in here, I just want to go back to the global illumination settings, go down to, not GI Advanced. Where's in V-Ray settings? Okay, yeah. In V-Ray settings, under color mapping advanced, we have this linear workflow button. I mentioned before how it's important to stay in a linear workflow when it comes to V-Ray. Basically, what V-Ray is doing a lot of math. It's doing a lot of math to calculate how the light bounces, where the light is going, how it's going to go through certain things like glass, how is it going to be refracted. It's doing tons of math, and for it to do its math correctly, it needs to work in a linear workflow. You can technically work in a nonlinear workflow, but that could cause problems that you may not be able to fix. For instance, color correcting or things like anti-aliasing, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. You might be able to fix that later in a post-production program, but it's going to give you more work, it's going to be more annoying, and there's a potential you might not be able to fix it. So the best thing to do is check this little box right here, linear workflow, and this will just kind of help keep you in a linear workflow, and you won't really have to worry about it too much. Linear workflow works, or most of the time is talking about color mapping, but just do this, keep your colors nice and happy. You can always go in and do different color corrections if you want to later. But for now, that's good. That can get us started. So excuse me, let's go ahead and just do a quick render so we can see what's going on. Make sure you are using the V-Ray renderer. V-Ray, excellent. And I can just click on render current frame. Remember that the Maya renderer might pop up for a split moment, and then it should go away and this one should pop up. You can tell it's the V-Ray one because it has all these little things down here. Maya doesn't have that. Okay, give that just a moment. And I'll show you how to, we already kind of talked about it a little bit, changing the settings to make your renders go faster. I'll show that to you again because this is right now set to do at least a minute long render, and that's going to be too much when you're trying to get really quick shots. In fact, I'm going to just stop it right now, for now. So what about all those layers that we rendered? We just picked 10 of them. Where are they? We can see them up here. So RGB color is like everything put together. That's just our basic overall render. Alpha, if we had any alpha channels, would be in here. Atmospheric effects, it's black. Why is it black? That's because I have no atmospheric effects, so there's nothing for the render to show. Go over here to background, same thing. Caustics, I have them turned off right now. Global illumination, same thing, it's turned off. Lighting, there we go. Now we can see all the light in the scene. Reflection. I did not make the material for these flowers. Whoever designed the material for them he made them really reflective for some reason. So this map is for the reflection map. Refraction, we don't have anything for refraction in this. Subsurface scatter, same thing. Self-illumination, not yet. And specular, you can see here are the highlights on these petals for the reflection. So we can already start to see how all of these maps are coming together to create this scene. Let's go ahead and minimize that. And now we're going to add a few more elements to it and just make the scene a little bit more interesting. Let's start by giving an actual main light source. I like to do the dome light just to give it general lighting, and then another light as the main light source to cast the shadows. V-Ray lights. I'm just going to go ahead and do a rectangle light. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. And you should probably just change the size with the settings in here, but we're just doing a practice. It's not a huge deal. Actually, I think I want to be over here. Okay. I might have to do another one for some backlighting. Let's see. Or that one might be too extreme. Oh my gosh, that is so sharp. can move it away. We can turn it down. That's looking a little better. I don't think I need too much backlighting. We'll just leave it as it is. This is just meant to be an example. So while we're on the topic of rendering out just to see what's going on, let's go ahead back into our render settings and let's under Vray, which we were already at. Let's change some of these to make our renders faster, excuse me. So right now max subdivides are set to 100 and the max render time is set to 1 minute. Just like that render inside of Substance Painter, the V-Ray will keep on rendering until it either hits 100 max subdivides or it hits 1 minute. It will stop at one of those. So we can always set this to 30 seconds, 0.30, and now it will stop at 30 seconds. I'm also going to reduce my subdivides just to make this go a little bit faster, and I'm going to up my threshold just a little bit. I feel like, is that the default? Yeah, default. That must be it. Let's do 0.05. The higher this number, the less high quality it's going to be. That's pretty good. I'm not too worried about the others that much. And because we're wanting our scene to look a little bit better, I am going to turn on global illumination. Remember, this is all of the bounce light. And I could turn down these two for now if I wanted to, if it was still taking a long time for my render to go through, but I think they'll be okay. Okay, so now our render should start getting faster. Let's start playing with some of the materials and things like that. Let's go ahead and make this lamp base a new material. I'm going to use car paint because I think it looks cool. Sure, let's leave it a blue base color, turn it down a little bit. I want to be kind of glossy, maybe a little bit reflection, actually not too much. I'm going to turn the flake size down. And turn up the map a little bit because I don't want them to be extremely large on my lamp. Okay, zoom in a tiny bit more and let's see what this looks like. Oh wait, I forgot I want to do one more thing. So that was just me adding a basic material. Now let's add the light material, which we already did kind of look at a tiny bit. Assign new material. And when I talk about these, I mean V-Ray materials. We're going to be working solely in V-Ray materials for now. V-Ray light. Now, right off the bat, V-Ray light's not going to be too interesting. If we go ahead and render this, it's not really doing anything, and in fact, it kind of sucks because it looks like this gray blob that's not even blending in with our scene correctly. But we can see the car paint material doing a nice job on the lamp base. But we can still tell it's self-illuminated, not just because we know we just did it, but if we go over here to our, if it wants to scroll down for me, you can change between these different layers while it's rendering. My computer seems to be having a hard time with it. It's getting a little angry, but now it's done rendering. Now we can see in the self-illumination layer, excuse me, it's showing up now. We know that item is self-illuminated. And let me actually turn up the effects of the light bulb and we'll see how it affects other layers too. So I'm going to change the color, actually change the color to temperature instead and give it like a warm temperature. Soft yellow light. Up the multiplier. I find emit on backside and direct illumination helps it get more of a glow and be more like a light bulb. And that should be good for that, nothing too fancy. Now let's go ahead and try that render again. Now we see this light bulb is actually lighting up now. It looks so much better. Let's give the computer a moment to render that. I really hope my voice is not sounding demonic. It worked the first time I did this test, but you never know how technology can be. Okay. And my renders are going by so much faster. No, they might not be as pretty, but they're going by faster because I turned everything down and limited it to 30 seconds. So let's go ahead and take a look now at global illumination, all of the bounce light. This is all of the bounce light happening. You can see it a little bit here and here too because we now have that light bulb right there. If we go to lighting, we see the light affected here because of the light bulb. We don't see the light bulb itself because it's self-illumination, not the same thing. We shouldn't have any refraction or that. Self-illumination, there we go, we can see it. And specular, we have more of an effect now because of that added light bulb. So there, we can definitely see how those are working. I think I'm going to actually up this a little bit more. I want to see it. Okay. And just for fun, I'm going to add a reflective texture to this material so we can see that one too. So let's just go to basic V-Ray material is fine. Let's see. Here's reflection. I don't think I want to turn it up all the way. Let's give it like a brownish color. Maybe it's like a book or something. Let's see here. That should be fine. Let's see what this looks like. Now, because I left it on a specular layer, it's going to still be on that one, but we can, of course, change that back up here. And now we can see that reflection in here. And if we go to our reflection layer, give that a moment to load in, we can see it affecting that layer. Cool. All right. Now you might be thinking, why is this not popping at the refraction layer? Why is this not acting like real glass right here? I'll actually show you how to make a glass texture in another video. Unfortunately, I can't do it to this one because everything is attached to the glass. Unfortunately, I imported this object. But the reason why is because this material is not set up to be a actual glass material. It's not set up to do any reflections or refractions. So when we see our renders, it's kind of very plain and just like slight and just translucent. There's nothing too realistic about that. But all right, so we have our, let's say that we're happy with our scene. We have our renders. Actually, before I move on, let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything with this part. Okay, I'm not forgetting anything. I kind of flew past some things, but this is just the gist. We're now going to start looking at how to composite all of this together. So let's say you did like a little pass where the camera rotates and it frames your scene for you, and you rendered out that pass. When you go to do a render, let me get to the file. Okay. Oh, where did I put? Let me find. Oh, I believe they're all in here. This is what it was called beforehand. Okay, so when you go to do your render, unless you separate your render layers like you do with Arnold, they should all just end up in the master layer. And you're going to get this. I already did my AO pass. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But now we're going to get just our regular render, the RGB. Full screen this. Let's see. And then we have, is global illumination next? Yep. Then we have global illumination here. Lighting is next. Sorry, my mouse keeps disappearing. Reflection here. Self-illumination is really small. You can see it right there. Then we have specular. And I believe that should be it. Yep. So everything is really nice and tidy. It's just the name of the scene and then the node that is attached to it. So that's why I want to get rid of the Vray RE. Just it muddies everything up and it's really annoying. So now we can go ahead and start importing this into After Effects. Let me go ahead and get that up. So just a moment. Hey, After Effects worked this time. Before I was giving me some stuff about, oh shoot, it is giving it to me. I was misled. Yes? Okay, cool. Well, nothing happened, so we're good. So After Effects, I'm not going to go too much into detail with After Effects. Hopefully you already know it, or at least I can show you the basics of compositing. Over here is where you're going to load up all of your footage. So multiple files. After Effects is really nice when it comes to these things. When it comes to loading in files. Let me get over to it. all you have to do is click on one, and as long as you have the sequence part checked, it'll automatically pull up that entire sequence. And not like, it's not going to pull up like all of your layers. It's just going to pull up these end demo with all these numbers to it. And you don't have to click on the first one. You can click on any one, the sequence, it'll pull from the correct one. So import that. Excellent. It pulls up the window again, which is so nice. Next is GI, import. After Effects, you're such a pal. Got GI. Next is lighting. Here we go. Lighting, reflection, import. The reflection should be self-illumination. I think there's one more. Specular. I keep on forgetting to mention, so obviously right there I don't have atmosphere, background, caustics, etc. I turned those off because I didn't need them. And by turning off, you can do it one of two ways. You can go into your render settings and you can simply hit this little Y so it goes no atmospheric effects, no background. I simply remove them, but this works too. Either way, it's going to be disabled basically. Okay, After Effects, you're going to want to go ahead and start. Now, if you have a sequence like this, you don't have to go all the way up here and file new composition. If you just drag and drop your first one down to the work area, it'll automatically make a composition with the right time and the right size for your composition words. So I like to do that personally instead of trying to make a new one, then saying, oh wait, how long did I make it? How long was 70 frames? I don't remember. I like to do things as easy as possible. So we have this in here. If we go ahead and hit play, it's going to play it for us. Maybe not in real time, but it'll play. You can see how that's going. Now we're going to want to start layering up our all of our renders, our passes. That's what I really should be calling them. These are passes. You have your beauty pass, your specular pass, your reflection pass, etc., etc. And you're going to want to do a blending mode to blend all these passes together. Blender works very similar, or the Blender. The After Effects blending layers work just like Photoshop layers. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you already kind of know what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and drop this next one. This is, oh, that was the same one. I did that last time too. There we go. Drop this one in here. And for the most part, overlay is going to be fine. You've been using mostly overlay or screen. If you want to do add more contrast, color burn will add contrast for you. But which one did I pull in? Okay, it's global illumination. We just want to do an overlay. So blending modes, overlay. There we go. Next we have lighting. Let's do another overlay. And of course, if something seems a little too strong, like this seems a little strong for me, you can always go click this little arrow. There's going to be a drop down menu and click down the transform. You can lower the opacity or do whatever you need to too. And of course, you can pull in different color corrections and other things like that too. Overall, it's best, well, I shouldn't say it's best, save your color correction for the end, but I'll show you in a minute once we have the final thing kind of put together. I'm actually going to try doing this one as a burn. Let's see what that looks like. Where did it go? Yeah, that's way too dark. We don't want that. Let's go back to overlay. Oh, I keep on like not finding it. There we go. We'll see how it looks at the end, then I'll do my little corrections. Bring in this one. So this one's going to be a little bit different. This one has just black and white scale. We're going to instead use the blending mode called screen. Screen takes out the black, so all you're left with is the white. Just like that. So that was reflection. Here's self-illumination. Same thing. We're going to want to go to screen. Blending mode, screen. And it's hard to see right now because the light bulb's a little cut off, but the light bulb will start glowing a little bit better. And we can do things to help that along too. And then specular. And same thing. Screen. Awesome. Let's just play that through real quick. Cool, looking pretty good. I don't see the need to do too much color correction here, so I'm not going to worry about anything. But of course, you're more than welcome to do whatever you want. Maybe a motion blur would be a good thing to do. We can actually play with that in just a moment. But real quick, I'm actually going to do a blur over the light bulb to kind of help give it more of that glowy feel to it. Now, I still have no idea how this one is pronounced. I pronounce it Gaussian because that's how I've always heard people say it. Apparently it's like Gaussian or something like that. I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and drag... Oops, I didn't mean to just click on it. Stop it. Drag this over my self-illumination layer. Obviously it will only affect that layer. And now I can play with the effects to kind of give that light bulb a little bit more of a hazy glow to it. Let's do horizontal and vertical. Not a whole lot to play with here. It's just a matter of, is it blurry? Is it not blurry? But there we go. Okay, another one I can do is a motion blur. That might be a little fun to do, just a little bit of one. I think it's this one that I want. I'm going to drag this onto the first layer. And let's see how this looks. It's a very slight effect. We don't want anything too crazy. But it might be nice. Oops, let's up it a lot and see how it looks. Not too much of an effect there, but of course, I'm just showing that you can play with things and add lots of layers to it. Okay, well, we're missing one layer, aren't we? You already saw I had it, the AO pass. AO passes can be really important. They can help you get that detail in shadowy areas and just make your shadows pop so much more, and actually make your highlights and your shadows pop a lot more. Vray doesn't like to give us a AO pass extremely easy. If you're used to using Arnold just gives you an AO pass, which is fantastic. We love Arnold for that. We gotta trick V-Ray a little bit. To do this, it might be a good idea to duplicate all of your objects and put them on a separate layer, or save a separate file, whatever you want to do. But we're going to have to assign a new material to all of our objects. Because it's just a practice file and I'm not too worried about it, I'm just going to go ahead and select all of my objects. Going to go to Assign New Material, right here. And we're going to assign a V-Ray light to it. We want everything just to be a gray blob. Not even a blob, just a gray screen altogether. I'm going to go ahead and call this AO so I know that this is not a normal texture. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. Render this. So it's a gray blob. That's what we want, right? There is one problem with this. We can still see some black spots here and here, and we don't want that. Let's go ahead and get out of that. The way to fix this is simply emit on backside. And now if we render this out, pure gray, and that's what we want. Now obviously that's not our AO pass. So now what we have to do, we want to click on our, pretty sure it's color right here. I'm having a hard time remembering. But we click on the color insert box right here, and now we're going to add V-Ray dirt to it. Now it's going to appear washed out and pure white. But if we render this, render current frame, we should see a very nice looking AO pass. Using V-Ray dirt, we can trick V-Ray into giving us the AO pass that we really want. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And I always forget to mention this first. When you're doing this part, when you're just doing your AO pass, you can go up to your render settings and turn off your GI and your caustics and all that stuff. You don't need any of that stuff. You can even get rid of all of these. You don't need any of this when you're doing your AO pass. You can do it again, still appear the same. So it'll just give you a little bit less, I guess it'll take a little bit less time to render out, and it'll help your computer go a little bit faster. So let's say we have our AO pass. Let's jump back into After Effects. Get out of that. I just want to get back to my project. Import my AO pass now, which I already have. Great, let's bring it in like we did before. Now this one, you're not going to want to use screen. Now we want to take out all of the white, we want to leave the black. So we're going to go to a blending mode called multiply. Blending mode and multiply. And now we have some nice shadows. And if you're like, oh, I don't really see the difference, just go ahead and click on these parts. Oops, I think I clicked on, okay, good. Excuse me. You can go ahead and click on this and like see how it's affecting your scene, which can be really nice to see. So it's kind of like, what's my for? Assuring you that it's working. Now let's say your AO pass, like right here, it's actually pretty dark and I'm not a huge fan of that. I can always lower the opacity, but that's going to lower the opacity for everything. You can do multiple AO passes and adjust it in Maya, render it, and then redo it in here and have multiple layers of AO passes so that some of your shadowy areas are exactly what you want and others are different, but they're still exactly what you want. So you can do as many passes as you need and keep on layering them on top of each other like this. It all depends on what you need for your scene. So let's say this is good, I like it, I'm happy with it. Now you can go ahead and do a new composition, or let's see, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Should be a way to, I guess not. Now it's time to do a new composition, which I know sounds weird, but this is going to be our final render, or final set before we export it. Go ahead and bring your everything put together in here, and now it's one solid thing. So now you can start doing more color corrections and other things that you need. And I believe this isn't sized correctly, and you can always change the composition. Let's see, this one is set to 120 or 1280 by 720. What's this one set to? Okay, yeah, no. I'll just type it in. Oops, I hit enter when I shouldn't have. 720. Okay, so now it's correct. You can play through that. After Effects doesn't always play in real time. You might have to let it buffer. It even tells you up here that's not real time. But there we go. And now you can export this and save it. So pretty easy to just combine all of these elements. It sounds scarier than it actually is. You just gotta kind of work slowly, check your, I guess, render layers as they're coming through, and just keep working with them one step at a time, and then you can combine them all into this very photorealistic, beautiful render. This render was some slapped together materials, nothing too crazy, but the lighting already feels so soft and natural. It looks beautiful for the very little work that got put into it. So imagine what you can do with your renders that you spend so much time on. They'll look absolutely amazing. So that's it for this one. I'll make another video that covers some of the materials specifically and what you can do with them.